I'm Dwayne Brummett. He's Ali Alberigo, and this is the School Owner Talk podcast. Hello and welcome back to our School Owner Talk podcast. I'm Dwayne Brummett, and he's Ali Alberigo. Ali, nice to be with you, sir.
So now you're trying to be me now, and I'm going to be you.
Yeah, I tried to come up with a little something different for the intro rather than, what I always say, and then I don't even know who I am.
Yeah, that's funny. Like when Gus's tagline is, "Hey, everybody." Like, that's all it is. I'm like, I guess
there's a little Texas accent in there.
Yeah, hey, everybody. And I'm like, okay, that's a good intro there, buddy. That's so funny. But cool to be with you, dude. How's everything going? How's the weather by you? Is it summer yet? Because it's like,
oh gosh, yeah, nice and hot. Let me see. It's only 82 right now. Yesterday it was 100.
Wow. I mean, we have been chilly. Like, today is what, Wednesday? Monday it was 58 degrees, like the entire day. Like cold. And I'm like, I couldn't, I don't know what's going on, but now we're hopefully getting nicer weather. But
I'm not looking forward to my electric bill at the studio.
Yeah, that's high because of the ACs and everything.
Oh gosh, yeah.
I know, but though electric really hasn't gone up much, right? Or has it gone up in your area?
Yeah.
Oh, it has?
Yeah,
I know everything's going up, inflation. I mean, like, that's all part of what we're going to chat about today too, is, that whole entire concept of mindset, right? But yeah, it's scary, isn't it? Kind of like a little nerve-wracking. And, of course, we talked last week about recession and what could you do and how do you make more money and focus on the new things. But, I think today is a little bit more on the like altruistic spiritual side, maybe, I guess, accountability.
Yeah, I loved, so let me set this up real quick. So the listeners know, Ali had written an article, and basically the title of, and correct me if I'm wrong, but accountability is a confusing word for most.
Yes.
And the spin that we're talking about with regards to accountability is for us as owners.
Yeah.
How do we use accountability to our advantage, or are we actually using accountability in most cases to our advantage? And so when you showed me this article, you said, why don't we talk about this? And I said, this is perfect because I don't know about you, but I believe that, everyone needs accountability. I believe that everyone needs a group of friends to, a community to help them. I also believe that, a good coach can take you where you want to go a lot faster than you doing it on your own. And that's based upon obviously the knowledge and skill levels that coach has, but also the accountability structure that's put into place in order to get you where you want to go.
Now, and I have to add to that, though, you also have to be a willing participant in the coaching, right? Because so many people just refuse, make excuses, argue and fight, justify, in their words, like, or not even justify. I think more like prove, or I'm trying to think of the word, like be able to feel that it's what they're saying is true. When in reality, it might be a false sense, like a false thought, I can't think of the term, but yeah, I mean, like, so a lot of people will say things like, no, not in my town, or like my area, I can't do that. Or, I live in a small town, I do this. Like, for example, in my school in Costa Rica back in the day, he was charging like $70 a month, something like that. And I said to him, why don't we raise your prices to at least what I'm doing in New York in that area? And at the time it was like $140 a month. Oh, no one can afford it. My people couldn't afford it. I said, listen, can you please just do me a favor and try it? Like, keep the old people paying what they're doing, all the new people, lo and behold, 3-4 months later, he's like, yeah. And this was his comment, which is so people drove me crazy. Yeah. I signed up like, 10 people, but they're all doctors and lawyers. It's not like, the working class guy. I go, but you see, people can afford you. They can pay that amount of money. It might be a different type of clientele. So if you want to help the poor people, you could do that, but you can't do it unless you have enough money to do so. So let those lawyers and doctors and wealthy clientele pay the tuition that you're worth. Maybe you can then, give back or scholarship those poor people in. I said, but if you're broke, you can't afford to do any of it. right?
Right.
They won't be able to stay in business. So that's their mindset is everything for people, and sometimes it hurts them more so than not.
Yeah. So you have in your article 6 steps for
Yeah.
accountability, right?
Yeah.
So do you want to dive in? We talk about the first one.
Sure. I mean, I definitely have them written out here. I pulled the article up so we could look at it. So I'll give you a little idea of why I wrote this article. So
Please.
it kind of goes back three articles. So recently I saw someone post a meme. They were pissed off a martial artist about how people are, fakes and clowns, and they give themselves rank, and they don't really have 8 degrees, but they only have 1 degree, but they made their resume up and they fake their way through. And my comment was basically like, listen, this has been going on since the martial arts has started. It's that people who need that ego, or to at least a false sense of ego, to be able to be great, and their students to follow them, right? So I also posted a picture of these belts that are sold by a company that come in various grades of distress, a black belt. So you could buy like a 3rd degree black belt looking belt that has a certain amount of wear to it, brand new, but worn.
Kind of like ripped jeans.
Exactly. I'm wearing them right now. And then you could go so it had junior master, high ranking master, grandmaster, something like that. And when the time you bought the grandmaster belt, it was like a shredded black belt where the white was showing through, was torn and ripped and tattered. And I'm like, this is what goes on. So I say to myself, that led into another article, which was all about, kind of people understanding what rank is and what it means and what it doesn't mean. And then I went into accountability for my students, right? So I talked about, that obligation. Sometimes people don't realize accountability, and there's various versions of it nowadays, right? Which is I don't know, a person from the 50s might have a different sense of accountability than a person in 2020, right? Like I call it, more convenience morality. Like we're all good and we do the right thing until no one's watching or until it becomes difficult, right? And as a Christian man, I'm sure you see this all the time, like people who are Christians that, are doing opposite stuff of what they preach, in church or, whatever. And they're false Christians, like I see that with my favorite band, Striper. They always get shredded by Christians. Like, you're not a Christian, you play rock and roll, you're the devil's music. And like, how do you judge or justify somebody by their taste in music? You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so accountability to me was really the most focus. Like, what is accountability? And I wrote down, it's one actions. One definition is, the actions a person takes. However, it's much deeper meaning than that. I'm looking at my monitor. It's about moral values, what we do depending on how we think, our obligation to our family, our teachers, our relatives, our loved ones, and so on. And that's accountability, the definition. But what's accountability in business too? That's a big question, right? And that's where I'll go on. But what are your thoughts? Like, what kind of things do you have for, number one, I'll interview you, like for your own accountability type, because I know you're a very moral, Christian, God loving and faring person. Like, so what things do you hold high in your accountability?
Yeah, I'm not perfect. And so I don't want to give that, I've been a hypocrite before too. So, but a hypocrite is just not himself on Sunday.
Right.
So, but that's not my line. That was Zig Ziglar's line, and he may have taken it for somebody else. But yeah, I kind of go back to what Jesus even said. He said, "Let your yes be your yes, and your no be your no." So if you are going to say you're going to do something, then you do it, and if you say you're not going to do it, then don't do it.
Right.
And then obviously, I pull all of my standards, all of my morality from scripture, and whether or not I should do X, Y, or Z, or A, B, and C. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so that's where my standards come from first and foremost. Now, that being said, do I always make the mark every time? No. Do I mess up? Certainly. But then, I just, ask for forgiveness in that area and then try not to do it again. the biggest, I would say the top people that I mess up the most with generally happens to be family members, with my wife and kids, as opposed to other people, which is, I heard somebody say this before. You should treat business like family and family like business. And I never understood that. But I guess from the standpoint is, when you run your business, you always treat everybody great. And then when you come home, you should be doing the same thing, not running them like a business, but you should be treating them great. I fall short, in those areas as well. So, I just think that you definitely want to have a good base for your standards. And like I said, obviously, I pull mine from Scripture.
And that's what I find interesting too, is that what do they say? That saying is more like, those closest to us, we treat those closest to us less than we do others that aren't. But I think and I also have it right on my wall: complacency breeds contempt, right? It says it right there. Like when we get used to things, when we're comfortable, when we're take for granted, that we have an amazing spouse. And I try myself to remind myself to really recognize that on a day-to-day basis. So I think that's pretty important. And I know we're getting kind of esoteric in a way, religion and morality. But I think, though, if you hold the same standard to your business on accountability, and you have a standard or set of rules, and we've talked about this a million times, a rule book for your business, it'll be a lot easier to maintain, your set of whatever your standards are. Like, for example, go ahead.
As I say, accountability has cost me money before at the studio.
Yeah.
When I said that I was going to do something and then didn't follow through, and then I had to pay. Even financially for different things, just because I didn't do what I said I was going to do or give the service that I said I was going to give. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to charge you for that because that wasn't, what I said it was going to be. And that is my fault, so it's cost me money before. And I would rather it cost me money than my reputation. Although, some of my mistakes have cost, or put a ding in my reputation before too.
Yeah. And by the way, also on the other side of the spectrum in your school, your accountability that you hold your students to be accountable sometimes cost you money. Like, hey, you didn't wear your uniform, you can't do class. That's bullcrap. I'm going home and we're quitting. Like, or you didn't get your belt level because they don't know their material and you hold them back. And then they get mad at you because they don't have accountability. They don't want to realize, like one of my friends, I forget who it was, a parent came up to them and said, why didn't my son get his yellow belt? And he turned to the parent and said, I don't know. Why didn't your son get his yellow belt? And like, well, what do you mean? You're the teacher. He goes, yeah, but you should know, right? You should at least know what it is that he needs to do so that maybe you can help me get him there. I only see him 3 hours a week, if that, and sometimes one on the week, you only come once a week. So how am I supposed to monitor all my students and make sure I'm in that kid's head to get them to be where they have to be?
Well,
so
it's a team effort.
Yeah, that accountability sometimes for parents is a missing thing. And that's initially why I wrote the article. I wrote two sides of it, one business and one for students and the parents, because I'm like, listen, if you want something for your child, my daughter, we had, when she was younger, she struggled with school a little. So I would bring her to a tutor. It cost me like $150 an hour. So I had two choices, Dwayne. I could have either said the teachers in school suck and allowed my daughter to be stupid and blamed it on the school, or I could have said the teachers in the school suck. I'm going to get a tutor to make sure that she's smart and give her the advantage. Now, I granted not everyone can afford that or has the time for that, and they do expect that of a school, but you have to be accountable for it, right? You have to make sure that you hold yourself accountable for certain things and standards that you want. You can't blame everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll go through some of the lists. So number one, the first thing I said, know your role, right? So know your role is you need to understand for each role that you have what your responsibility is and what your accountability is. So if you're unsure, I think, like, let's say you're an employee and you work for a company and you don't know your role or what's expected of you, you need to do not hesitate to ask, whoever's your boss, who's responsible, find out what your role is and what you're supposed to do and what you're supposed to be. Have a clear understanding of what you're responsible for, your accountability and responsibility. Because if you don't, the excuse might be they never showed me. And I found this like recently. One of my favorite shows is Restaurant Impossible with Chef Robert Irvine. And he goes in 2 days, he's got to rebuild a restaurant, and he looks at the structure. And a lot of times people say, like, no one ever trained me. No one ever taught me. No one ever told me. I'm going, like, for me, if that were me, I would have learned it on my own, figured it out on my own, interjected my thoughts on how to make it better. But most people just sit back, keep the paycheck, and they're happy with having poor results, right? But so we need to know our role. And by the way, that could be a student. A student needs to know their role. Like, what is their, my teacher from Japan, he gave us a sheet, which we call Q level, of our techniques. And it was our job, beg, borrow, steal, pay others, learn from others, read it in a book, watch a video, to learn those moves so that we could get them down. So that when it comes time to show them and perform them, then we had that for our teacher to do our best.
Yep.
Does that make sense? What are your thoughts?
No, well, it does. And you by knowing what your roles are, that helps you to know what your responsibilities are. And then once you know what your responsibilities are, then you should know what you're accountable for, within that role, and what you're not accountable for as well. Because sometimes you can take on some accountabilities that you should not be taking on, especially in team roles, where because if you try to take on something else and your team member was supposed to be doing that, then you're stepping on those toes as well.
And it's interesting though, and I have to kind of call business owners out and school owners out, because a lot of times they just basically sit back. They're like a boat in the middle of the ocean with no engine, no oars, or no sail, and they just let their business being spun whichever way. Like, oh, the economy's bad. Okay, so we're going to be broke. Like they don't take accountability for their own success. And then excuse after excuse as to why, we call it justification, right?
They don't take accountability for their own failure either.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because they partly can make that boat rise and, fall. And to go with the boat analogy, sometimes they don't even have a clear port that they want to go into. So not even knowing what port they want to be sailing to, that clarity is such a big deficiency in, being able to even turn the motor on or get the sails up, because you don't even know where you're going.
Right. I'll give you an example. And by the way, this is just my mentality. Like I had about like 50 grand in a investment fund. And I've never been much in stocks and bonds and, IRAs and mutual funds. And, I've always lost my shirt on things like that. So I've always invested in real estate, brick and mortar, tenants and businesses. But anyway, so I put my money in 50,000 into a fund, and bam, I've lost like 9 grand, 10 grand on it. Right. So I call up the guy and I'm like, I'd like to liquidate it all and put it just back into my savings account. Because like it infuriates me to watch 10,000 of my hard-earned dollars go away based on the government and society and whatever's bringing the flow, ebb and flow of our money system. And I'm at, I won't make any money on interest, 0.001%. I think I got an investment interest check of 15 cents the other day on my bank accounts, right? So, but at the same time, I won't lose money. And I'm not leaving it up to those that want to lose. Now, some people might say, but Ali, if you keep it in for the long term, it's going to come around. Well, to be honest, I don't know how much time I want it to be and how much time, maybe another 3 years of this economy would zero me out the way things are going. So how's that going to come around when I'm broke, right? So I'm like, yeah, I understand your concept and philosophy, but cash me out. I don't want to have anything to do with this. So I'm being a little bit more conservative. So we have to be accountable. Like I could say, oh, it's the stock market's fault. It was that investor's fault. I need to be responsible and accountable for my own income, because if not, who's to blame? At the end of the day, they're going to go, it's your money. You should have pulled it out, dummy.
And that's a perfect segue, I think, to the second one, is to be honest.
Yeah, right? Take that one.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, it's your article.
All right, yeah, but still, okay, I'll do it, and we'll go back and forth, just like those guys on News Channel. You and I like that. So honesty, and by the way, I just talked about that similar, like. We have to sometimes, especially when it comes to accountability, we have to set our egos and our pride aside. That's the first step. in the key to being honest, right? We can't be afraid to ask questions. If I'm an employee or a junior instructor or a black belt, I need to be able to ask questions and ask for help. Don't feel like, hey, I'm smarter than that, or I have this position. Ask help from whoever and wherever you could get it, because there are people out there. I can promise you this, especially in the martial art industry. You could reach out to a Dave Kovar or a Tom Petiri or super highly successful school owners. I guarantee you 99% of them will give time to you. They'll share with you. I do it all the time. It sometimes kills me time-wise, but I like sharing and helping others. I know you do. People call us all the time. It might not be every day, but ask advice, right? So we have to be honest and know that when we need help and ask for it. And like I said, you'll be surprised at how many people are out there to help you or want to help you. Also be okay with making mistakes, right? Simply admit it. Like an employee sometimes, or a person makes a mistake and they don't admit to the mistake. They kind of forget it or ignore it, hoping I call it the ostrich syndrome, where you bury your head in the sand and sat long enough and take your head out. You're hoping that everything that was going on, the chaos around you, has passed you by. A lot of people live their lives like that. I see it a lot in my school, where a parent stops bringing the kid and then they're like, stop paying. And then they'll ignore you. Like before that, hey, Shion, can you help me with Johnny? Hey, what do you think about this? And they're like on it. Every text message, every email, they're like talking to you like regularly, immediate response. The minute they stop paying or they want to quit, all of a sudden they don't know your number. They don't respond. They don't get your emails. So be strong enough and powerful enough to be able to just do the right thing and stand up for that moral values and integrity and be honest, and make mistakes. Like, oh, I'm sorry, we ran into a really bad financial stretch. I can't afford it right now, but I don't want to screw you. Is it okay if we put it on hold, or, whatever, can you work with me? But people don't step up, and they're not honest with themselves and honest with others. And they don't ever apologize. People don't apologize for making mistakes. And I think that's the first of many steps to make things right. Just make sure to fix the behavior. Like when you make a mistake, fix it. Don't just ignore it and repeat it. I see that happen all the time as well. Do the right thing and change your behavior so you're not that person over and over again, right? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so in raising our youngest, I implemented this, where when he would do something that was incorrect, it wouldn't be, oh, sorry, Dad.
Right.
He would have to say, Dad, will you forgive me for X, whatever X was. And the reason I did that was because he has to state what the offense was, and then ask for the forgiveness of that offense.
Right.
That takes accountability. That is being honest with what you actually did and asking for someone to forgive you when you have to state it that way. And so I think when it comes to honesty, it's important to, especially if you're apologizing to somebody, state that. Don't say I'm sorry. Say, look, I am devastated. Would you forgive me for X, Y, and Z? And here's how I'm going to, solve this problem.
And that's like the same mistake the same thing that people make mistakes on the opposite side with timeouts. Kid does bad, you're in timeout for 2 minutes. They never, like when I do a timeout, by the way, I hate them, but if I have to do them, like you're in timeout, it's like 1 minute long, and I'll walk over 40 seconds in and I'll go, do you realize why you're in timeout? Half the time they don't know. Was it, what went on? And it's because you kept hitting the other kid, or you were spinning in a circle, or you were doing whatever. Okay, I'll come back in 15 seconds and we'll get you out of timeout. You just can't repeat that behavior, right? You understand? So you have to kind of let people know. And that's, again, accountability, right? And I do believe, I don't want to be like political in any way, but I think that our society is a society of lack of accountability.
That's not political. I think you're calling it out. I mean, come on.
So look, you can steal up to $900 and not get arrested. You can carry. A parent of mine who's a cop arrested a guy for an illegal handgun with filed down serial numbers before he was done filing his paperwork so he could get back on the streets. The guy waved to him and said, thanks. Like, he was nice about it. It wasn't like he was a jerk, but he had to arrest him. And he said, thanks very much. I'll see you soon. Hopefully won't see you soon, that kind of thing. And he left before he's done for an illegal handgun with filed down serial numbers. Usually you'd get thrown in prison. So there's no real accountability, right? And that's a scary thing in our world, and we kind of miss out on that. So being honest is the real key for number 2, and asking questions and apologizing and take responsibility for your mistakes. Number 3, I did use your time wisely. And I know this might not almost like lead from one to the next, but if you're not great at time management, learn more about it and start to master that skill. Read a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, any of the books by Stephen Covey on time management. Watch his video called Big Rocks on YouTube about, managing your time and prioritizing your time and so on. You could get so much more done if you learn not to procrastinate and to also be better at managing your time. You'd be shocked. Like, if you feel lazy watching tons of TV, I watch tons of television, but I watch it from like 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock every night. We do it religiously and sometimes on the weekends longer, but that's our downtime, our reset time, our escape time. Other people might be out partying at a nightclub. We love to watch movies, hang out by our pool. But I could do more of that as long as I've gotten all my stuff done that I'm responsible for. Because I'm good at time management, I could get things done quickly and organize and bang out more than most people could do in a full day, just because I've learned over the years how to manage my time and do it. So that's an important factor. What are your thoughts on that?
You can't get any more time. So
Right.
You do have to be accountable, at least you should be accountable to the time that you do have.
Right.
So I agree with you. Learning time management is going to make you more accountable. With regards to procrastination, Dan Sullivan gave this concept. I absolutely love this concept with regards to procrastination. He said procrastinate, and this is a paraphrase, but procrastination basically is the indicator of what you need to be doing next.
Wow. Good. Yeah.
If you're putting something off, you're procrastinating it. That's probably the best indicator that that's the first thing that you should be doing.
Exactly. And I know you don't believe in like multitasking, and you don't think that concept is doable. Like you're always, can you explain a little bit more about what your thoughts are on that?
Well, it's scientifically proven that you can't multitask. Even though people say, yeah, I can multitask, I can do 2 things at once. You cannot. It's actually been proven that you can't do it. Now, even you take a computer does not multitask either. It will run and then it stops one to do the other, and then it just does it faster.
Right.
It doesn't multitask. It just does it faster. Each task individually faster. I'm not saying it does it faster than your brain, but what I'm saying is it looks like things are multitasking when they're not. And then when you have, like, even if you get in your computer and it's been on too long, right, for days and days and days, and you have too many windows open, what happens? It's slowing down, right? You got to turn it off, turn it back on. Why? Because you need to stop all the stuff in the background. Even on your phones, you have all those screens on your phones that are sitting behind, slowing the processing down because you're trying to get this to multitask. We don't multitask either. So I'm a big proponent on time blocking, working on whatever it is that you need to accomplish in that time so that you can be more focused, get better results faster, quicker, and a lot easier, in your day. So yeah, so time management, I agree with you, is really important with regards to your accountability.
Yeah.
That is going to expedite your business.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to expedite your downtime. I schedule my times off.
Right.
I know it's crazy, right? It's crazy to think what you schedule your time off. I do. I schedule the times I'm going to be on and the times that I'm going to be off.
Yeah.
I run my day by a schedule.
Right.
And so that just takes a lot of stress out of it when I do that. Now, not everybody likes that. Not everyone subscribes to it. I just know that I function so much better when I have a schedule on a day-to-day basis, and I run my life through that schedule. And then a lot of things don't fall through the cracks that normally would, as long as it gets put into my schedule.
I like that too. Like you have to have a point where you just say, I'm shutting off. Like I have a guy sometimes will say to me, Ali, can I ask you some questions this Saturday? I'm like, absolutely not. I don't do coaching questions on the weekends. I teach in the morning, 11, I'm done. I get home, I buy bagels. My wife and I sit and, I'll work and I'll do things, but it's on my own enjoyment of schedule. Like I might do some texting and things like that, but I'm not going to have someone else bog me down. Like a lot of times people, my partner in my website business, can you talk? I'm like, not really. I'm watching TV right now. Like, is it important? Because if it's important and they need me and it's like an emergency, of course, I'm available. But if it's just to go over things, that's not like, I always say their urgency isn't my urgency, right? Like they want to talk now, but what about before when I reached out at 11 when I was available and they couldn't talk? My partner is famous for that. She likes it on her terms. She loves to sleep all day and work at night. I'm like, I'm not going to do a business call at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. I'm done. Right. I'm shut down for the day. That kind of thing. Okay, so you want me to go into the next one?
I do, but before we get into that, I know in the beginning this kind of irked you is you would send me information, but I'd only respond in my time. So, I check my emails at certain times of the day. I respond back in certain times of the day, and that's pretty much it. And in the beginning, you weren't a big fan of that. So just to let everybody know.
I wasn't going to bring it up because I'm used to it by now. Like I sometimes would like today, thank God you responded. I'm like, Dwayne, I need the link for today's show. And you're like, oh crap, I didn't send it. And you sent it and you were waiting for me, right? Where is he? He's not signed in yet on the podcast. And I'm like, I don't have the link, damn it. That kind of thing. But sometimes you're busy doing your thing, not on a podcast time, but I might have a question midday and that might not fit into your schedule when you're checking your emails or checking your text messaging. So I know I have to wait. Like, so if it's ever urgent, I'll call you on your cell phone maybe or something like that where you'll see, hey, he's calling me. It must be an urgent matter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And you're good with me too. Where you're like, hey, Ali, I have a question for you. Can you talk now? And like normally for all my friends, I drop everything that I have. But if it was something crazy busy, then I'd say, no, I'm in the middle of teaching class. Can we talk later? That kind of thing. And by the way, that leads into the next thing, which was stop making false promises to initially please people. Right. And I find like I have a handyman. He's a student of 25 years and he does like all my painting and fixing and this and that around the dojo. And I'll say, hey, can I get this done? Yes, sir. I'll get it done. I'll have it done by next week. And then next week never comes around. The next week never comes around. And, and it's kind of frustrating and annoying to me because I love scheduling. So tell me Wednesday and it's Wednesday. If you can't do it on Wednesday, don't tell me Wednesday. Tell me Friday, but make sure you're there on friggin' Friday.
Right.
Like don't come up with excuses. So I think that if you're at your job or your boss asks you, or you're an instructor at a school and your head instructor asks you, or you have to have a specific project done by a specific date, make sure that you always let people know real expectations. Like I'll give you an example. I had a student who is a communications expert for the military. He retired from the military, was training with me, and then he started working for me. He was awesome when it came to questions. So like if I was in my office, but I was on the phone, some people would walk in the office like my dad and he'd stand there staring at me, like totally throw me off. I'm looking at him, go away. Now I'm distracted. Especially if it was a coaching call, very unprofessional. But this one guy worked for me. He'd write a little note on a little sticky note, slide it to me, and then he'd walk out my office because he had no right to be in there listening to my private conversation, but he wanted to tell me what he needed. And if it was an emergency, I'd say, and I'd write a note, do this, or I would just say, soon when I'm done, that kind of thing. And he never interrupted my flow. But many people promise things and then they never follow up. And by the way, a parent who joins your school that promises to bring their kid to class and promises to buy the equipment so their kid could have the best lessons, and then they fall short. They don't communicate. They don't show up. They don't come with the uniform prepared. That irks the heck out of me. Like, right. I'm like, why can't you just you have one thing to do, and it's 3 pieces, a gi top, gi pants, or 4, belt, and 5 maybe t-shirt and socks in my school. Show up with that stuff. Don't not show up with it. I can't believe how many people, oh, it's my fault. It was in the laundry. Well, then why are you here? Like I had a kid show up the other day for his test in shorts and socks with a tank top because they came straight from some activity and they didn't have their uniform. So I said, you're here for your test, right? His name was Justin, sweet kid. and the grandparent, and I'm like, they're like, yeah. I'm like, you can't. Where's your uniform? Oh, we don't have it. Okay, well, you can't test. I'm sorry. You gotta understand that this is an art, a martial art. On your test day, you want to look your sharpest. You can't show up in like gym clothes. Like, are you kidding?
Isn't it funny that you even added the word sorry?
Yeah, exactly. Of course,
Right,
because you're apologizing because you don't want them to be upset, but they should be apologizing to you.
Yes, yes. It's like, I'm not sorry you didn't follow the directions.
Yeah. And then the grandfather said to me, "Oh, that's a shame. Can we just come to class later?" I said, "Are you going to have his uniform later?" No. Then you can't come to class. What part of this part, like we wear a uniform, are you missing? Right? Like you don't like, and then I get this with all my little work, like they're wearing different colored t-shirts. I'm like, you can't do that, people. This is a uniform school. You wouldn't do that at a Catholic school. You wouldn't do it at even in like a preschool that wears uniforms. Your kid would be decked in their uniform. I'm sorry, whoever, I couldn't get his uniform clean, so I'm sending him in a Yankee shirt. No, you're not. They're not coming into class that way. So anyway, I think that that's something that people don't realize. And we make false promises as parents that we're going to check the kids' homework, make sure that they did their projects, that's a huge responsibility. And by the way, I think that's what stresses parents out too, because now they have a new responsibility. If a kid wants to take karate, they sign them up, and now they have a new responsibility on top of all their old other responsibilities. So I get why sometimes they're stressed and freaking out and not prepared and so on. But we just got to learn how to deal with them a little bit more. And by the way, if you're overwhelmed, and let's say you work at a company or you have a boss or your instructor asks you to do a task, I train my people to do this pretty well, and they'd say, yeah, I already have 5 tasks that you asked me to do, and you have a new one. Is this a bigger priority than the other 5? And I might say, yeah, I need this done right away. So slide it in front of all the other ones and get it done. And when you're done, you could go back to the other ones. Or I might say, you know what? Nah, just finish what you got on your plate. I don't need this until next week. So ask and, shift the space of priority, but you have to find out first how much of a priority it is. And if it's the highest priority for your boss, then shift the stuff accordingly.
And, I was going to add to this, stop making false promises. The biggest false promise that I ever made was I had a health food store ask us to do a demo for them for one of their, it wasn't a grand opening, but it was like, one of the celebration years, I don't know how many years celebrations, right?
Right.
And I said, oh, absolutely, I'll be there. Didn't put it in my books. Totally forgot.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that was horrible. I was, we were going to be the part of the entertainment that was there. And do you know that they never, ever asked us to be a part of anything ever again? And they do a lot of different things in the community. And I apologized profusely. I understand. Well, I'm not even angry at them why they don't ask us to do anything, because I screwed that up. So that's one aspect of stop making false promises.
But you also were accountable and apologized. So I think that company probably should have been a little bit more understanding. But I get how they're like, hey, screw him. He screwed us, right? But you didn't just not show, you apologize and recognize. And it was legitimately a mistake. You didn't put it in your book. It's not a good one. It hurt them.
No, it was my responsibility.
They should have let you come back a little.
And then, with regards to our students and our business, we've got to be very, very cautious on the promises that we make, that we actually follow through with them. So what I mean by that is, if we say that we're going to help them improve their self-esteem, we need to make sure that we're helping them improve their self-esteem. We're not, the parents, like you said, have a part to play, or grandparents or whatever. So there is a team effort here, but we need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to cover the things that we say that we're going to promise throughout our program, and we do it strategically, as well.
And by the way, I love what you just said, because it is frustrating as a school owner, like why we have to explain that they should be wearing a uniform and why it's so important. But maybe they're a public school student that wears whatever they want. They've never had a form of military style private school uniform discipline. Maybe they don't play sports. They never plays. Like, I don't know what it is, but I think it's our responsibility to educate them and then constantly remind them that it's their responsibility to now follow up, because if they don't, they hurt our ability to help their child even more. Right? Like, if they're showing up unprepared every single time and I got to yell at the kid for not having their weapons, then that kid's not going to feel good. And then they're not going to want to come. So I have to say to those parents, like, look, I had a dad with a brown belt kid who doesn't show up and with his weaponry and equipment. And I had to go out and say to him, like, do you want Dylan to quit? And he's like, what do you mean? I go, because I'm yelling at him every time he comes unprepared. And you're not helping him be prepared by reminding him or checking on him. So now he's getting yelled at. I bet you he hates me. No, he loves you. But he's going to start to hate me because all I do is complain when he walks in the door. But is it my fault, or he should be mad at you? But he's not going to be. He's going to want to quit because you as a parent are not responsible and being accountable for what you need.
Well, and I can just throw this in here real quick. And we've talked about this on a previous podcast with regards to rules, but that's where I have that clipboard at the entrance of, when they walk in, and if they don't have an item, whether it's their weapon, their sparring bag, if they're not wearing, their t-shirt or whatever it is, right? Of course, I don't let them come on the floor if they don't have their pants, or they forgot their belt, they get written on that clipboard. And we test every 3 months, like clockwork. They get 3 strikes.
Yeah.
And then the 4th strike in that 3 month time, if they get up to 4 strikes, they can't test, and they have to do that whole belt all over again, whether they know their information or not. So first one is a verbal warning. We talked to them, right? Yeah. Second one is a verbal warning and a phone call to the parent. The third one is a verbal warning and a meeting with the student and the parent.
Right.
So that way we've got, a structured way to make sure that we're following up on what we promise are going to happen if you don't do what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. And dude, that leads right into the last one, which is, and this probably should be a conversation that we have with parents.
Well, I thought there were 6.
Oh, maybe. Yeah, it is. I'm sorry. You're right.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right. So the 5th one.
The 5th one, don't overcommit. And I think parents overcommit too many times. Like, they take on way more responsibility than they have time for. So they're only giving a small percentage to everything. And yeah, it'd be great to have your kids experience everything in the world. However, if they're only going to just dabble, then they're never going to get a full experience, right? So what's the sense? Like, play a little bit of guitar this month, play a little piano that month. Are they ever going to be good at any one instrument? No. Have them learn the guitar. Learn the piano, maybe a few years, learn it, be proficient at it, then go to the next thing, but don't overcommit. Many people think that they can accomplish way more than they can. And some of them can if they're taught proper methods of organization and time management, like we talked about before, but they'll get a ton more done, like you said, if they're linearly focused on one activity or maybe 1 or 2. So if it's in the terms of commitment, parents should be careful that they don't overcommit. And prioritize what they feel to be better. And remember, when you're a boss or even when you're an employee, you can't please everyone all the time and do everything that everyone asks of you. So you have to be realistic with your time and expectations. Like in the last one we talked about, where you ask for the boss to prioritize what they want, or your head instructor, which activity or task should they do. But make sure, like if, for example, you own your own school, you have to be able to express realistically what you expect of your clients. Like, hey, in our school, we do X, Y, and Z. We expect you to always be in your uniform. We expect you to always do what you're asked to do for the benefit of your child, of course, not because we're tyrants, but this is our rules and regulations of what we do, right? And I don't know if we do that enough. You and I are really good with that, with our onboarding text messages and emails and all that stuff. But how many people are really
videos?
And videos, are they taking it to heart? But I think if you have clear expectations, you tell people they can't train unless they're in a uniform, right?
Well, I'll give you for instance. I just had somebody, and so when we were doing our onboarding process to see if they're going to become a student, They're doing the trial phase. If they deny being a student, I send them a survey with an ethical bribe.
Right.
The ethical bribe is a $5 gift card, either to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts, or just a $5, Visa gift card. And I want to know why they didn't join.
Right.
And so I just had one come through this week, and the biggest reason they didn't join was because they read the attendance policy.
Mm-hmm.
And they weren't sure that they were going to be able to follow through the attendance policy. So now we did follow up with them, call them on the phone. We had to leave a message. We still haven't got a hold with them personally yet, but we will, and explain, their insurance, the policy, make sure that we're on the same page, and that we do have private lessons to supplement what they aren't able to do. But that being said, that was a beautiful parent that decided not to overcommit.
Right. No, that's great though. And a lot of times people will overcommit and then fall short. And then, like we always say, breaks in my school, breaks equal quits. They're quitting because they're not coming. So they lose interest, right? And that happens quite often. I could see it. I have a handful of people right now that are just not training. And I'm like, really, like, to the parents, like, they're not going to continue if this keeps going on. And no, they love it. It's just been busy. I'm like, no, you got to get them in there. So we have to make sure that if we own our own company, we express realistically to the clients what we expect of them, so that they have a clear expectation, and they're knowing that they're not going to overcommit, or they're not going to do it if they can't do it correctly. This also ties into making false promises, the ones that I said prior. But we have to always look at that. And it goes back into accountability. I'm going to join your program. I'm going to come 2 days a week or 3 days a week, and I'm going to commit to it. I'm going to practice at home. I'm going to study the material. But I think in our society, there are just so many dabblers. Like, they don't really, you know what I mean? Like, they're so busy doing everything that they don't have any time to be great at anything.
Well, and even as a business owner, what would be more productive for you would be to get your core curriculum, your core lesson plan, or lesson plans dialed in. Don't overcommit by going, okay, I'm going to add this into my program, add this into my program, add this into my program. Get that one avenue really, really dialed in, and then you can go and kind of connect other things that would help supplement or grow or bring other things into your program that would be a benefit. But when you try to, like you said, basically be a jack of all trades and master of none, then your business really doesn't have a focal point. You want to be a master of one part of your business. Look, let's just say it's, you're a Taekwondo school. Do Taekwondo really, really well, right? And then you want to, like back in the day, it was XMA and Hyper. Well, I guess Hyper's still around, right? But you want to add in all these other things. I'm not saying that you shouldn't add those in, but make sure that you have your core really, really defined.
Yeah.
And not only defined for yourself, defined for your your employees, your instructors that are helping, but then even down to like what we have done with our Storm team, which is, I think, your leadership team. It's the people that are going to learn how to teach and become your next teachers. Then you get that dialed in on how you want them to learn to teach all of that information all the way up to Black Belt and beyond, or whatever it is, and then create the tests to go with it. I mean, you can go on and on and on, but you're drilling down and creating this really, really rooted structure, rather than trying to overcommit yourself. Because I've been there, right? Ooh, I want to put this program on. I want that program. This is going to help me out. And yes, it's exciting for a while, but then I lose sight of what my core is. Does that make sense?
Totally does. And I've lived it just like you have. And it's like, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then all of a sudden, like, where's our focus? And then you're like here and there, and you're all over the place, and you really don't have an idea of who you are. You don't have a true identity. I'd rather be like, I love in the restaurant shows that they do like the menus, and then Gordon Ramsay and Hell's Kitchen, Robert Irvine, and they'll go, you have way too many items on this menu. Let's just get one page, front and back. That's it. 12 items here, 12, a few appetizers, whatever. And it's easier to cook. You have a better product. You're able to do it more organized. You know what to order. People look for that. They want more stability when it comes to knowing what's expected of them. And that's why it's important to teach them that.
Yeah, and this is from Tom Pateri, because he always said this. At least this is who I learned it from. But less is best.
Yes. Yeah.
Less is best. And
absolutely.
And I think simple is better. If you do that with regards to the restaurant, you have the front and back. That also expedites things. So you're gonna. I don't want to say you're gonna get them in and out quicker, but they're gonna be able to make an initial decision on what they want to eat a lot faster.
Yeah. Yeah. And one of the people who are listening, Matt Frey, he said, parents need to be accountable for their kids' attendance. I usually tell them that they need to keep their kids in class regularly, or else you're telling them it's okay to skip or quit, which they'll carry into their adult lives. And I agree, Matt. I think that that's essential when it goes to, the future. If they could only look in, like when I was a kid, I used to watch a TV show called I Dream of Jeannie. It was with Barbara Eden. Still to this day, when I see that show, she's the most beautiful woman. And like she was the Pam Anderson of her time,
Did you see?
Yeah, I did. You did the I Dream of Jeannie thing. And in fact, we do a kata where we take our bow staff and we cross arms like that. And I say, just like I Dream of Jeannie, no one knows what the heck.
Nobody knows, right?
No, but in I Dream of Jeannie, they had this machine. They put these rubles in the machine. If they wound it backwards, they could see the past. And if they wound it forward, they could see the future, or they could go back to the past and change the dial and change how the future would look if they did this or that. So like if parents could only see what the future looked like if their kids stuck with it and were black belts, and the opportunities and the confidence and the ability they would have, I don't think any parent in their right mind would quit. Right. So it's essential for them to understand that there is a future, and we have to be the visionaries to be able to get that. So we're running low on time. I did have one last thing, and I'll call it, and basically it's called reflecting. Reflect on your stuff. Accountability creates opportunities to learn where you are making mistakes. Ask others what they believe you could have done better, like you did, Dwayne, with the ethical bribe, asking people what they thought or what was going on and what they may have, why they didn't sign up, why they didn't make the commitment. Find out what people are thinking. And what could they have done differently? What could you have done differently? So that they'll become better, you'll become better, and then take those suggestions and put them into action. Don't defend them, because certain times when people, and I get it, sometimes people are like, everyone's an expert and they know how to run your business. Like, I once gave a clipboard to a few parents and said, just walk around the school and tell me all the things you think I should fix, touch up, correct. Tell me things you see that maybe I'm not seeing, because I'm here every day, and then rather than them saying, oh, there's a piece of garbage, or there's some spider webs, or this paint is chipped, I'd start getting design, recommendations for everybody who's a DIY, like if you change the color and the feng shui. And I'm like, I didn't ask for that. I just want to know what you're seeing in your eyes, what the school needs, the chipped molding, the paint's peeling, the bathroom is dirty, the floor is chipped, or whatever the case may be, because sometimes we see that every day and we don't notice it. But I think that it's important for us to maybe reflect on our own accountability, and that reflection will create opportunities to learn from our own mistakes. And I think that's a big one. I think a lot of us, our ego stops us from doing that. Right? Do you agree?
Yeah. And I love that you said ask other individuals. So for instance, I did a webinar, a Zoom seminar, if you will, on Monday, with regards to the health coaching that I do.
Yeah.
And I had, discover the 7 top reasons why people are scared to lose weight.
I saw you advertising that. That looked good. Yeah.
And then how to crush it, right?
Yeah.
So at the end, and I did a 30-minute thing, just like I said I was going to do. At the end, I had some other individuals that were on there. A couple of them were clients, so I had mostly non-clients on there, but I had a few clients on there. So I immediately hung up, and then I got off, and then I called those clients and I said, hey, thanks for being on there. I'm just curious, what did you think of the seminar, and what would have made it better?
Yeah.
And I got some really good feedback. One of them had said it would have been nice to give an opportunity at the end for Q&A, and see if individuals wanted to ask some questions, and those type of things. So that was some good feedback. Another one, which you and I talked about already, which I did it on this seminar. I was using too much, because he said to me, he goes, well, everything was great, but there were a lot of uhs.
Really? People picked up on that.
Well, he did. And so if he did, others did as well.
Well, maybe not, though, because that person must be aware, because people say, all the time.
I don't want to. I want to do it as the least amount of. So that was great reflection. So when you brought that up in this article with regards to reflection, I think it's beautiful, especially if you're going to be humble about the reflection.
Yeah.
When I do those surveys, hey, why didn't you join?
Right.
When I do those surveys on why did you quit?
Right.
I take them in consideration. They're true to that person doesn't necessarily mean they're true to the benefit or things that I need to change in my studio. So don't just take them in as information. Don't take them as anything hurtful. That it's just pure information. That's it. You get to decipher what you want to do with that information. But the only way that you're going to be productive in deciphering that is if you come to that information or that reflection with a humble heart and looking to improve rather than to defend.
Yeah. And I agree. Like, there was a time when people told me things, I'd get pissed off and say, get the hell out of here if you don't like it. And then I don't know what shifted in my mindset where I started to realize, like, look, I have to be customer centric and I have to make sure that they're happy. But there's a fine line between them being happy and them thinking that they could take over and run the show. So I had to know that teach all my people, there are boundaries on how you act and what you could get. And as long as you communicate in the proper way, we'll try to come up with a solution. But I didn't have to take it personal too. Like I had a woman, you probably heard me say this 100 times, but I had a woman one time say, Sensei, there's a pile of tissues behind that garbage pail. It's been there for like 3 days, 4 days. I'm like, okay, pick it up. Put it in the garbage, right? But they wanted me to know that they watched it for 4 days staying there. And by the way, it was kind of tucked behind the pail, which was up against a wall, hidden behind the pail. So my guys are probably quickly emptying the pail, not looking and taking the garbage out and not seeing that one on the floor, which they should have, but they didn't. So, but couldn't you just pick it up? Like, that part of it. So that annoyed me. But then again, I have to think like, wow, if they weren't a client and they came in and saw the garbage, maybe they would think our school was disgusting.
Right.
So there's only one time for a first impression. So I shifted that. And isn't it funny? Like, people will walk over garbage. It's on the floor. And I'll go like, how many people just stepped over this paper and you couldn't have picked it up? Like, I'll teach my kids, you got to be accountable. This is your dojo too. It's not my dojo and you just use it. It's our school. So you help us maintain it. So that accountability is such a powerful word. And I hope people enjoyed this talk.
And I was just going to take the reflection piece and just say this. It doesn't always have to be your mistakes, or it doesn't always have to be your situation. It could be where you're actually seeing somebody else's mistakes or somebody else's situation, and you can reflect on how you want to, or how, if you were put in those situations, how you would respond to that as well. So it doesn't necessarily have, because you can learn from other people's lessons, right?
Yeah.
So just take that in consideration too.
Yeah, I love it. I don't know if even when I do these type of shows with Gus, like where we get to use our what a combination of teaching experience, like 50, 60 years of you and I, our numbers of teaching combined, and share those lessons with others, and I think, to me, like, I don't know if this podcast is sexy enough for people like go like, I got to listen to this, because it's not, how do we get students? How do we make more money? But if you really dig down into the essence of this podcast, it's all about all those things.
Oh, sure.
right? Like, but people don't have the buzzwords, it's not like shiny, bright objects to make them, get their next Ferrari or whatever. And, but it is essential to having a school that has longevity and will make it through a recession, because people are very loyal to you, and you're going to maintain, if not grow, during downtimes until they turn around. And just imagine we got through COVID. Now we're in a recession. But once we get through that and life kind of hopefully levels off and things get better, imagine how well the schools will do that have maintained and stayed and were strong through this.
Yeah, I agree. It's just, you're going to have to weather the storm right now.
Yep. And it's like being on a ship and the weather comes in. There's nothing you could do other than fight to keep the boat afloat and bailing out water as it's coming in and doing all the things you need to stay safe during those times. So I think between last show, which was, about recession proofing and adding on income and extra income and other things, which people should go back to that one. This one also is basically everything we talked about was about retention, right? How to keep people, maintain them, keep them happy, communicate better, be a better employee, be a better boss, be a better staff member, whatever it may be. It's about self-improvement to really up your service and take it to another level, another dimension.
Yep. Yeah. So everybody go to schoolownertalk.com to get access to all the 321 now podcasts.
Crazy, right?
Episodes.
Awesome, dude. It's so good seeing you. Thanks for everything. And I will chat with you later. Listeners, I hope you enjoyed it. And I guess we'll talk to you next time.
All right. Have a good one, sir.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Martial Arts School Owner Talk podcast. This would not be possible if it weren't for the support of our amazing sponsors. Please check out Elite Insights for all your website needs. LeadHunterMedia.com, your online digital marketer and content provider. Academy Kings BJJ Growth Consulting and Management Group at GrowMyAcademy.com. SparkMembership.com, hands down the best martial arts software for school owner management on the planet. GetKarateStudents.com, a martial arts growth consulting company for all your systems. AddHealthCoaching.com, helping school owners create a whole nother revenue stream for their school. We will see you next time.